And I'm going to introduce our speakers. These two guys are guys that we love to hate and we love to love. It's one of those relationships we can't do with you, but we can't do without you. And we appreciate the job that you guys do, because I know it's not always easy. So with that, to my right over here is Tim Steller. Steller. He is a columnist for the Arizona Star. He focuses on local issues in Tucson and around the state of Arizona. With his column, he aims to provide thoughtful, analyzing, and engaging readers in important conversations about the region. We'll let him prove that. He is a 25-year veteran of reporting and editing. Then to my left is Dan Shearer. He has been the editor of the Green Valley News and Sahuarita Sun since 2009. He is editor-director for the parent company, WIC Communication, where he helps guide newsrooms in 12 states. He comes here from the Arizona Republic, where he was senior editor and has also worked in Palm Springs and lives here in Sahuarita. You can meet him for coffee sometimes. We'll let you talk to us about that when we get done. What we're going to do is we're going to let them talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to take questions for the audience. So prepare a question, not a statement, but prepare a question, be thinking about it. Please welcome our two guests.
Well, thank you. I have been trying to be nice to the lady in the back, sending chairs back for her. She's the one standing. But I want to introduce her and one other person. That is Kim Smith, one of my reporters, who is absolutely awesome. I've been in this business a long time, and she is by far one of the best reporters I have worked with, and it's an absolute privilege. So, and then in the back is Cody Hedges, the young guy who looks out of place. So, and I have no idea why he wore a red shirt. Okay, so we'll be talking to him on that. Know your audience, Cody. I told you this about these people. So, as George said, I've been with the Green Valley News for 15 years. Absolutely the favorite job I've ever had, although I haven't had too many. I was with the Arizona Republic for more than 20 years, and then I started my career out in Palm Springs for 2 years right out of college. They always say you have to pay your dues. If you're going to, in this business, Palm Springs is a great place to pay them. I cannot whine about that one. But the Republic, I tell people, was a good training ground for coming here, where we're actually doing, I think, more important journalism. The big difference between the two is that here, you see your audience every single day, because they come into my office and say, I want to see the editor, and then I will go up front. And I will always say, what kind of mood does it look like they're in? Tell them in a meeting. And then, but at the Arizona Republic, we had this big building, and it was very ominous, and a lot of people just wouldn't walk in and demand to see the people who were in charge, which is too bad. I love being here. So we're going to talk a little bit about journalism, but I'm going to turn it over to Tim, who I don't see often enough. We see each other, as it were, on the radio, because we both do a lot of radio out of Tucson.
Hello there. That's great. It was. I didn't know what I was going to arrive to when I was driving down I-19 today, so it's great to have a room full. I counted the numbers, standing over there waiting for the calendar to be done, and you're close to 100, so I was really happy with that. Yeah, thank you. It really makes it feel worthwhile. Yeah, I'm one of these people. I paid my dues in different places, but started my career in Flagstaff, so that was also a pretty decent place to pay dues. Came down here with plans on making a name for myself and moving on to become like a foreign correspondent or something. I've done a little bit of that in a local way, because I covered border issues in Mexico for a long time, and I've done this and that related to Mexico. But honestly, I didn't care about Tucson when I was covering the border, first 6 years or whatever. I'd go down to Nogales. It reminded me, driving up the road here, I would go down to Nogales all the time, back and forth. And one night, it was night, I was driving back, and I could not stay awake. And I pulled off, parked in one of those parking lots over there, passed out behind the wheel, and then awoke with a start and jammed my foot, because I thought I was still going. but I wasn't, thank God.
Volume.
More volume? Okay.
We're getting feedback when we go too high, so.
Okay. So anyway, I ended up staying here, got married, have had 2 kids. My youngest child just graduated from high school, so moving into a different stage of life now. I have played a lot of roles at the Star, but I've been what they call Metro columnist for the last 11 years. A role I never really asked for, but I was sort of given it, and I kind of like it now. It's been a while. I think we'll go into talking about the industry a little bit, where we're at, and maybe I'll let, now that I've told you a little bit about myself, maybe I'll let Dan start. But I do want to say one thing, which is I go back and read old Arizona Daily Stars a lot on newspapers.com. I don't know if you all use that. It's a website that you have to pay for, subscribe to, but it is absolutely invaluable. And it what Dan and Kim and others here in Green Valley do with the paper reminds me somewhat of what we used to do, which is a very, like all the events were in there. And I wish that we still have that function. But I try not to look back and worry too much these days. I try to just enjoy what I've got, which is a pretty good gig.
I'm going to read a very short blurb out of my favorite magazine. It's called The Week. I don't know if anybody gets that or not. Love The Week. I've gotten it for years and years. This was in July 26th. It says, newspapers lost 77% of their jobs over the past 20 years, the single steepest dive taken by any of the 532 industries tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Nationally, this really gets me. Public relations reps now outnumber newspaper reporters at about 7 to 1. Yeah, so how sad. I think what's even more sad is I'm glad that I was in journalism pre-internet, although it's very, very valuable, but it has eaten up all the advertising dollars, and therefore we are not nearly as robust as we once were. What we have been talking about in our organization lately, and we had in the paper recently that our CEO is leaving. The Wick family has owned this newspaper chain for 98 years. He really believes in it. He's an entrepreneur by heart, and he is probably going to go into some aspect of journalism that is going to put an emphasis on objective journalism, because we have already seen that there are websites out there, some are just flat out fake, and others lean. The Center Square, Arizona Mirror is one. Probably Fox. I don't even go to them anymore unless it's breaking news. And then for a while there, CNN was leaning, but certainly they are more objective. And so this is what we're missing, though. And I'm wondering, and I speak at U of A every semester, and I think you've taught there, and you see, I think, this next generation now looking for outlets that will just affirm what they believe. And therefore, you do not get all sides, and you do not have a well-rounded view of the world. And in fact, it's more divisive. That is my greatest fear as I prepare to exit the industry in the next who knows how many years. But that's what I fear we're turning into. And with those PR people, why could I never be a PR person? I've never found anything I believed in enough or trusted, and that's probably by virtue of being a newspaper guy, because I hate everybody and they're all lying to us, and usually I'm right. But I can never do that. It's just not my thing. But I get it. It's a very important job sometimes. But their job is to promote, and our job is to find out what the truth is and the facts. And we found out, I'll say it, under Trump, that facts don't matter. With him, I always knew that was the case. But with his audience, I kind of figured they might stand up and say, no, the facts do matter. I'm waiting for the first person to stand up. So we're in a pickle in this business. I don't know what's going to take to get out of it, to be honest with you. And so we see on average, I think it's 2 newspapers a week go under, and across the country that creates news deserts, and there are a lot of people who want to fill them in, usually with garbage. So how many news outlets are there that is one guy with a camera and a Facebook page? That's really sad. So what a lot of people will not understand is not so much what they're getting, but what they're not getting in that situation. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the stories we're working on, how we are a community paper, but we're a little different, mostly because of experienced people like Kim. But I'll let you speak.
It is, as I was mentioning at the end there, it's a little sad to look back. When I arrived at the Star, I think we had probably 5 full-time employees in the library alone. And when I became business editor in 2006, we had 10 members of the business staff. Now we do still have 2 or 3 people dedicated to business journalism, but it is hard to look back and see what we had and what we have now. But that said, it can be strangely exhilarating for me to kind of wake up every morning and go, well, we don't have that anymore, but you got a chance to go out and talk to whoever you want. In my case, I have a very open role, and so I rove from topic to topic, and I'm still just tickled to have that opportunity. Now, Dan started talking about something that I would like to elaborate a little bit on, some of the what happened to us. Why did it go from where we were to where we are? He mentioned the drain of advertising dollars. Okay, so previously, owning a printing press was like the ability to print money. We had, in our industry, profit margins in the 20% plus range. Employed hundreds of people at a place as small as Tucson, 500 maybe. Then, things changed. The internet was probably the single biggest change. So that drained off ad revenue. It also allowed for something that is both bad and good, which is this diversification of news sources. I mean, anyone can kind of set themselves up as a news source now, and there's a lot of crap out there. But now and then you find, like the guy with the camera and the Facebook page, maybe isn't usually good, but once in a while they're great. Or maybe they get one story really right, and you have to rush to figure out what they learned. Dan also mentioned the stigmatization, I would call it, of the news media. The phrase "the media" or mainstream media, it's almost always a pejorative. It's not. I don't use it because for me, the word media is just too broad. For me, if you're going to talk about the media, then you should definitely be talking about Joe Rogan, for example, who's got the biggest podcast, I think, in America, or close to it. You should be talking about Sean Hannity's radio show. You should be talking about, this vast array of players. When you talk about the media, if you're talking about the legacy organizations like the Arizona Daily Star, and then all the networks and all that, well, that's one thing. Say that, legacy news media. But we've got this diversification of what should be called the media. And usually isn't, because when people use that term, they want to talk about us, And so that stigmatization has had an effect, I think. I mean, especially not among Democrats as much as among Republicans. When your party leader is calling us fake news all the time, it has an impact, And in my opinion, it's largely an effort to kind of control the story, control the narrative. If we're fake, then he can say what's real. But that's the way it goes. That's the atmosphere we're playing in right now. And frankly, as Dan also said, there are a lot of there's every place on the spectrum is filled right now, from very serious, fair-minded news organizations to, AI only. I mean, that's cropping up right now. Is news organizations that aren't even run by people. It's just you set up a website and then have AI feeding in information from, maybe they're scraping the web or whatever. So there's a couple other things I was going to mention. Oh yeah, well, so in Dan's case, WIC is, correct me if I'm wrong, a privately held, I don't know what the stock ownership is or whatever, but it's not a publicly traded company. Whereas our owners, Lee Enterprises, is a publicly traded company. That puts a lot of pressures on that you don't have if you're privately owned. Basically, the need to please investors quarter to quarter, year to year. And so that sometimes leads to cuts, if we're not making enough money, and it turns into a feeling of a downward spiral because you get worse and then you get cut because you get worse, etc. Still, like lately, we lost a bunch of people about a year and a half ago. We backfilled, and I don't feel bad about where we're at right now in our newsroom. Right now, just living for today. We don't have enough experience as people who know the community or know the job, but there's quite a lot of experienced people. You guys will remember names like Tony Davis. Henry Breen is new to town, but he grew up here and is very experienced. Well, now I'm a veteran. It's been 27 years since I got here. So, we're fighting this fight. I have no idea how it plays out. As I've said more than once here, it's just like something I go after day to day, sometimes with more energy, sometimes with less energy. I'll give you one story, then hand it back to Dan. Not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, I woke up. I was going to post my column on the Facebook page, and I noticed one of the pages I follow that follows the police scanner was referring to a big shootout in Tucson. And it was at a corner that I know because it's about a mile from my house and near a supermarket I go to and stuff. And I just got up and went, well, I want to figure that out. And I knew we didn't have a reporter coming on for a while. Nobody died, so I knew we weren't going to call someone out really special to go out there. And so I made sure I took my swim first. And I came home, got something to eat, and then went over to that corner, wandered around, and went out and covered this shootout in which 200 shots were fired between rival groups outside of a hookah lounge at 4 a.m. And, it feels great. It's just great to be able to do that stuff, to know what's going on. And the way I kind of got a good firsthand version of what happened was, as often is the case, by talking to street people. They were there hanging out, getting ready to do drugs, but of course they had been sleeping there overnight, and so when the shooting started, they were there. So I got some good quotes out of them and got a better story. So in sum, it's a tough situation, but it's still damn fun.
Okay. I wanted to mention some of the stories that we've gone after and how, I will be honest, we are a little different than your typical community newspaper, again, because of the experience we have. I'm going to give you one story out of the market in Safford, where we have the paper. Kim was the editor up there for a couple of years. This is before she got there. There had been here's the difference between a good media outlet and a really good one. And there was a shooting at a bar. Okay, not a big deal. Some guy was wounded, and everybody covered it in the area. And again, they have one of those guys with a camera and a Facebook page, and the paper did. And I ran into the mayor not long after that. I was up there for a few days, and he said, "Why would I pay for your paper, which had that story, but all these other ones are free, and I got it from them. Why would I pay?" And I said, "Well, because here's what we're going to do, is that there are 4 bars in town, and we have requested the police calls at all 4 of them, and we want to know is there one bar that's a trouble spot? And why are the police called there? Urinating in the parking lot, underage drinking, drug deals going on, whatever. And then we're going to figure out what the story is. Not just that a shooting happened, but why, and why at this bar all the time, because a year earlier they actually did have another shooting there and a guy had died. So that's what a good paper will do, is that digging. But again, overseeing roughly 30 papers in all these states here, I can tell you that a lot of times journalism, this is going to hurt me more than anybody, but we have had to bring on people who maybe we'd like to call them experienced reporters, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have even had a first look from us. So the experience level is a lot lower, and you're not getting as quality people, and you're not getting as many people. So that has been a problem. So for a lot of these places, doing the dog parades or the Boy Scout project, or all these things, which by the way are very important, they're just keeping their heads above water doing those. So to do something deeper is really tough for them. It's time consuming, and everyone has this tyranny of the urgent thing going on, where do I deal with the urgent or do I deal with the important? So I'm trying to help them figure out exactly what they should be going for. We tend to go after those stories and go deeper. I'm going to bring up a couple of them. I told Kim as she showed up I was going to call on her, and so just speak up. I know you can. Trust me. Kim has no problem telling me what she thinks, and that's her husband laughing over there. A couple of them that she did, Kim picks up on nuance, and then she turns it into this, in this case, like a 3,000-word story. This was a few years ago, but we had these police calls to this home, and it turns out that it was a guy taking care of his mom, or was the mom taking care of the son. And the crux of the story was, the bottom line was, sometimes you just can't help people. They don't want help, they reject help, or when agencies are involved, do they follow through? What are the police doing about it? Whatever. So Kim really dug into this one and found out all these agencies had tried to help these people, the neighbors had tried to help them, and still he dies and she ends up at a home. Because sometimes you just can't help people, which is really a depressing story to tell, but it was an important one. And Kim did a great job on that. We had several care homes close not long ago. Kim was on that one, and really kind of elbowing her way in on that. Got a very good rapport with the guy who was basically the culprit, and we got a lot of good information about ultimately what should you look for in a home. How can you tell one's about to go under? What do you do if suddenly the police call you and say, hey, your parents are going to be dumped on the street corner here in about 6 hours, come get them. All that happened. So this is the kind of stuff that people can report that this happened, but going deep is so important, and that's what we are trying to do where we are. There's so many, not because I know someone's going to ask about it, I'm banging my head against the wall on the hospital thing. I'm in contact, what's going to happen at the Green Valley Hospital? Great question. I keep asking the guy who has it listed for $35 million. My last contact with him was about a week and a half ago, and he said, we had some investors we were talking to, and they've gone dark on us. So I sent him a note back just today, actually this morning, and said, whatever happened with that? So this guy's out there, he doesn't, he wants to be very careful what he says to me. But I'm saying, look, I'm getting calls almost every day about this. I need something from you. So right now we're in the middle of reporting on this Casa Alitas, the asylum seeker shelter, and what's going on there. We have one instance of misspent money, or they didn't go through their proper procurement process. There is another, but we have to nail down some details on that, and it might take us a while, but this is where relationships and not letting go really pay off for you. And then I'll give you another one. There, we had a few, I don't know, it was a year and a half ago, Kim, the sheriff's deputy who got into a crash in Sarita, He says he was chasing a guy who was drag racing. I think he was drag racing himself. To be honest with you. How else do you end up with a 700-foot skid mark and hitting mailboxes and trees and railings and whatever? And that's what it was, 700 feet. And so I still remember Kim coming back from one of the court cases where he was, and you know, he looked at me and sneered. And I would too, Kim, you're putting this dirty laundry out there, as we should be doing, you know, because this is... Say again?
It was more his wife than it
More
was
this,
his
yeah. Yeah, and his mom. So everybody hates us. That's great. The whole family. And so, and it doesn't bother us when we're doing the right thing, especially things like that where we get called all the time, say, I'm going to sue you for putting my name in the paper. It's part of a public record. I mean, come on. You know, and I'm still waiting for that first lawsuit, by the way, for that type of stuff. So anyway, Kim and our whole staff, George and Brianna and Cody and Kevin, they do a really good job of digging, and we sit around and we don't just put up with the status quo. The goal is not to get the paper out. The goal is to get a good paper out, and some are better than others. I will say that, but that's the goal. So. You want to just go to questions? Or you have was great. We did meet the editor type thing, and so we set up at Posada Java, and we don't have a date for the next one, but the first one was just Wednesday, and it was my first day back from vacation, and so I didn't really know what was going on, but I faked it, and we had a lot of people come by and a lot of really good ideas, and some of it is following up on stuff that we've done, and others was mine. The mine was part of it, recycling, 2 or 3 other real big issues that people want to know about. It is so good for us to be face-to-face with people. So we're going to do these regularly. We did this one in August intentionally because we just didn't know. We want to kind of smooth out some of the problems as we get closer to the season, and but we'll continue doing them. Turns out I actually liked it. It's supposed to go an hour, and we were there about an hour and a half. So. Okay, so I told George that the Q&A is always far better than the speakers, so we will start now. Hold on a second. Cody, why do you have your hand up? You can talk to me anytime. Oh, go ahead. Brief.
I was told multiple times that I would do well in public relations, but I came to you, I wanted to be a journalist. And the picture that you two painted is rather bleak, I'm going to be honest. I'm coming to this really because I believe in it. So can you explain to these people why journalism is important?
Why journalism is important? You know, I think we can ask a lot of cities that have, or towns that have lost their newspapers. And first of all, it's almost impossible to get them back. And things do happen. Voter participation tends to go down. A lot of people who have their hands on the purse strings tend to do things that they shouldn't. The watchdog thing is very important, but also there's that sense of community that is lost. So we have the paper up in Williston, North Dakota. I've been up there several times. Williston is the site of an oil boom. And so when you go from being small town out of the way, Williston, North Dakota, to suddenly New York Times, CNN, everybody's parachuting in to tell the story of this incredible growth. It's jarring for a community, and you know what? The community came to the paper and said, we know that you have to cover this, but what we really want you to cover is just our Little League games and our streets in ill repair. They wanted to they saw the paper as the keeper of those things that define them as a community, and they were right. So it's a very good conversation.
Suzanne,
Cody, yeah.
So just to give my own quick answer to you, Cody. I mean, the thing is, if you learn these skills of news reporting, which are, you know, talking to people, interviewing, requesting documents, researching online, writing on deadline, writing long, you know, those are fantastic skills no matter what happens to the industry. Plus, there's opportunity. Should I lift this up, or it keeps ringing a little bit? Anyway, the thing is, there's so much opportunity in doing your own thing these days. Granted, it is hard to make money depending on what you're in, but like there's so many people out there, not just the Facebook page guys, but there's so many people out there doing their own versions of journalism, and you know, if you get these skills down, then you got a great ground to start doing whatever you want from. So I wouldn't be discouraged, and I'm not. I personally think there's great journalism going on right now, even though the institutions are degraded. There's also a little bit of rebirth going on.
Let me jump in on something. I just did this column on this guy who spoke at the Republican National Convention and lied and lied and lied, and he's from San Luis. And okay, so I just had heard that he had spoken, didn't know him, and went online, listened to the speech, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this guy's lying. He's just flat out lying. So the first thing I did was I contacted the paper in his area. And I said, I noticed you wrote about the speech, but you just wrote and said what he said. You repeated what he said. You didn't challenge him. The fact is, he was lying about your community. Never heard back from them. So I think there's a lot of good journalism going on, and there's a lot of lazy-ass journalism going on. And I think at what, and then the Republic, I went and looked at theirs, where I used to work. Same thing. Same thing. He said this, he said this, he said, not challenging it. Now more than ever, we need to challenge these things. And you can do it without being political. So.
What do you two?
One thing I want to say is I really appreciate you guys being here. It's not often you get kind of an inside look at the press and what's going on and how it functions. And listening here, you know, I've heard that before, that real investigative reporting has really kind of gone down quite a bit. And you mentioned the pressures of being called fake news and things like that. But you also mentioned the desire to be objective. And my question to you guys would be, is that desire to be objective causing a little bit too much of a false equivalence between a party that has kind of gone off the rails and is actually a danger, and a party that's normal?
That's a great question. And we have talked about it, but you go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. So the thing about my role is that as this column, the Metro columnist role is a little odd in that I do state opinions, but in my yeah.
Oh, that speaker. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's the issue. Anyway, but I try to. My background is in reporting, and I try to really back everything up with what I've done, and so I don't feel bound by that myself, and I've become myself less of a believer in objectivity over time. I'm a strong believer in fairness. Which, you know, granted, it's a fuzzy concept, but it certainly means, at minimum, when you're writing about somebody, you're contacting them. I'll give you a quick example here. I'm in the middle of a long project that is winding up now, and we sent the subject of the investigation wouldn't answer calls, and so we sent that person and their institution a list of 90 questions, which try to basically reveal everything, you know, so that everything is answered. They answered 71 of them, and this guy who's a pastor also called me, so we got some discussion, and then we got some more information, so we had to send him another 40 questions. And we just got back the answer this week, and they're like, we just answered 70 of your questions. We are not talking to you anymore. So anyway, that I consider to be fairness, you know, and we wouldn't be writing the story about these people if we didn't think there was something to write about, and in a sense, that judgment is kind of, I don't know if it's objective or not, but yeah, I try to hew to fairness and not worry about objectivity.
That's very difficult. When I was at the Arizona Republic, I worked next to people for 20 years. I could not tell you their politics. We never, ever, ever discussed it. And so I come down here and I'm told, well, you're writing columns and you're the news guy. And that involves an awful lot of trust from people. But objectivity, let's just talk about news coverage with that. Yeah, you can be objective and that type of stuff. Just tell people what the facts are, and don't bend it one way or the other. We have a saying in the newsroom. I think all newsrooms do. You know, what's said here doesn't get out the door. It would make you all very nervous. You know, but we have to be ourselves. But what's in the paper, though, it doesn't. You don't want the paper looking like me. You definitely don't want it looking like me. I get called on the carpet a lot. You're too liberal, you're too conservative, and always that is about the opinion pages, which I write very little on those. So it's you people who are biased, and that's where you want to be, you know? And I tell the Republicans, flat out, you're crappy at writing. You never write. And when you do, it's usually inaccurate. So I have two guys after me right now who've written letters that are just inaccurate. You know, you know where they get their talking points, and I encourage them to look at other sources and figure out that, yeah, this is just not right. So so it's an uneasy situation, to be honest. But when you find someone like the San Luis guy who was lying in front of the country at the Republican National Convention, you go after it, and you really are going for the facts. And I will tell you, I reached him at home, and I moved off to a little room in the house, and by the time I was done with him, I was screaming at him, which is not me. I was absolutely screaming at him. And I have it all on tape that no one will ever hear. But I walk out, and there's my wife and son looking at me, and I said, another day at the office. You know, and the fact is, it's okay to be pissed off when someone is lying to you, and that's exactly what was going on there. So, yeah.
I'd like to
Yeah.
know.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
I'd like to know about your letters to the editor. Are you the one that writes
The letters? Do I write the what?
the answers?
Oh,
You answer a question, and how do you choose what letters to the editor to publish?
you know, the letters are supposed to be a time where you get to say what you want. But sometimes things need clarification, so on occasion, yes, it's me who writes something at the end. I try not to, but sometimes, well, like these two guys, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with their letter. It's on the same topic, and at Wall's military record. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that, but I most certainly am not going to print them as is because they're inaccurate, you know. But yeah, I do write those things, and I don't like to because really it's supposed to be your time. But yeah, I do those. So, yes. Yes.
Well, first, I was a reporter for many years, and sometimes I tell people that, and it's like I'm saying, you know, I worked at a buggy whip factory.
Thank you.
She's a reporter.
But there has to be something that either Lee or Wick or some of the other big groups are going to do to help bring more people like Cody into the newsrooms. And are you active in that at all?
Well, when there's a lot more supply than demand, which I think there generally is, right? There's a more supply of aspiring reporters than there is demand, that is, for hiring them. So, I mean, I don't think it's hard finding the people. Quality may vary, but what's really, I find, both challenging but also exciting is helping people and watching them. People grow really fast in this work, I find, because the stakes are high and it tests you, as you certainly know, in ways that you haven't been tested before if you haven't done this job. And so it's funny. I mean, to me, it's the same. It's the same as it was. I mean, it's the same. The job is the same. It's just with different tools, different demands, but it's still interviewing the person. Go ahead.
That's what I tell people. The job hasn't changed. We go out and find good stories and put them in front of people. There's just lots of different ways to put them in front of people these days. Now, you try to recruit to Tucson, it's one thing. You try to recruit to Sidney, Montana, population 5,000, middle of nowhere, which I have done, it is very difficult. And so we're finding that college grads, and I'm going to bag on them because they deserve it, are more lifestyle oriented. You know, gosh, that's 3 hours from the nearest big city. I couldn't possibly go. Then you wasted 4 years of college. What do you think you're going to do? Start with the New York Times? You know, and there are great stories there if you just look for them. But they're reluctant. And so there's a lot of people wanting to do journalism, but a lot of them don't want to do the type of journalism that we do. Everyone wants to have a podcast, but you don't know anything. You have nothing to share with the world, you know. And they want to all right either be NFL sideline reporters or they want to do what Tim does. But you don't know. But you've never had kids in the school. You've never really paid taxes. You don't. I mean, you never bought a house. You just got to grow a little bit, and then maybe you can be in that position of doing something like that. But they all want it now, and it's very difficult. When I go to U of A, and you can probably speak to this more, I always say, first question, where do you get your news? And the answer now, consistently with college students, is that they bump into it on social media. They're not seeking it out. It has to find them. Now, a newspaper print has a beginning and it has an end, and in between there is the whole world, including places that you wouldn't go if you were on the web. So the web has actually not opened up our world regarding news, it's actually closed it down quite a bit, which is really depressing if you think of it. So, yes?
If you're trying to be fair, let's say you're writing something about Carrie Lake. She's lying her teeth off about something. How do you write that without making it appear to be a hit job?
Well, I mean, so I'll give you an example. For me, it really depends on the subject. So, Carrie Lake elicits strong feelings from me and probably a lot of other journalists because of her visceral attacks on us. And I should resist that kind of feeling, but it's hard to. Nevertheless, like the place where I have found some, if not common ground, at least common interest with her is in the topic of drug addiction and her emphasis on it. And that's an area where I have written kind of just straightforwardly about what she proposes, what her opponent proposed, and said what I think ought to happen between those options. And in fact, tomorrow, my column for tomorrow, it's kind of related to this, very related. It's basically panning the Democrats for their complete lack of focus on this issue, which I find to be perhaps the top social issue of our time. So it really depends, moment to moment, topic to topic. The one thing I find hilarious about this job is you do it long enough, and I forget whose good side I'm on and whose bad side I'm on. And so I'll call somebody, I'm like, damn it, were they mad at me? And I just have to call anyway, whatever.
This love-hate thing, huh?
Yeah.
We had Carrie Lake in our newsroom, and we know what she's like. She's a damned idiot. We can just say it. She's a damned idiot. And so I told everybody, okay, she's going to come in and she's going to try to start a fight. We are not going to take the bait, and we're going to talk about issues alone. Almost killed her. Within 10 seconds, I have it on my phone. I could play it for you, but I won't. She was attacking me. She's going after me. Again, didn't take the bait. She likes to fight. But then we got her turned on to the issues, and she doesn't know squat. She could not speak intelligently about water. She said her plan was to dig a canal from the Mississippi River to Arizona. She looks at me and she says, there can't be that many people whose land you have to go across. Are you kidding? This is 4 times longer than the CAP, and that took like 20 years. And so, and I'm just looking at her and thinking, you gotta be kidding. And then she goes, well, and there's another place, and I said, by the way, people in the Mississippi might want their water, So but the fact that she hadn't really thought deep about what I think is one of the most pressing issues going on. And so we just, we refused to take the bait, but we did talk to her about issues. And she kind of calms down when you do that. But you know what? She is a damned idiot. She doesn't say, because you know what? When I lived in Phoenix, she was a force. I mean, she was on. Now you knew that all she was doing is reading the news, but she was one of these people you welcomed into your home, and to tell you the news every night, and she's very trustworthy, and she hadn't gone off the rails, and then suddenly, boom, she does. And then she's off the air, and now she's running for all these offices. So we can, call a spade when we want to. We just covered that House Judiciary Committee meeting in Sarita a few months ago with Jim Jordan. And so he was 3 seconds into it, and I wrote that. And by the way, I wrote the story, but I called it an analysis, which allows me to say, "Are you kidding me?" Which is what we did. But 3 seconds into it, he's spouting a lie. He's spouting a lie. So this allows us to that different style of writing allows us to really point that out. After that hearing, I went to lunch with Juan Ciscomani. And I said, okay, Juan, you're not on that committee, but you're up there with 6 other members of Congress. He tells a lie, and you're roped in. I know you're not on the committee, but you're there because you don't say anything. Well, not my job to fact check other members of Congress. And I would say, yes, it is. If he is lying there about your district, something going on in your area, it is absolutely your job to point out and say, yeah, that's not quite correct. They're not going to do that. That's just not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
What are the best ways for us to support good journalism and reporting and to continue?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer, the question was, what are the best ways to support good journalism and reporting? And there's one obvious answer, which is to subscribe. But one thing you need to know about that is that over the last 20-some years, we've gone from an advertising-based model to a subscription-based model. So it's actually the subscriptions that cover our costs. In the past, it was almost entirely advertising. But I mean, the other thing is, getting. When I say I was about to say getting involved. Getting involved. Part of it is the talk. People talk, and when you're talking about what's in the Green Valley News or what's in the Arizona Daily Star, or when you call me and I call you back and we have a conversation, talk to people about it. I mean, if it's worth talking about, and it should be if you're that interested in it. So. Those are the 2 things that come to mind right away.
I would say subscribe because he's right, and yes, I know the cost is going up and we're not happy with it. And number 2, demand a better paper. We like getting the emails that say, gosh, good job on this story, but I like just as much the ones saying, hey, have you considered this? Or we want less of that and more of this. So we're going to do a reader survey this fall when the winter visitors get back, and just make sure that we're going after the right things because we have so few resources anymore. We want to make sure that we're using them the best way we can. But yeah, subscribe to the paper and, like Tim said, talk about it. I do a ton of radio out of Tucson. I do not enjoy it one bit. I do it because it gets Green Valley News out there. And it has paid off for us. So. In the back.
Yeah, so mine's kind of a 2-part. So has the newspaper industry ever done a focus group? What would bring them back? And any compelling 2-part stories about fake news maybe? And then I'd be excited to get the one next week, talking about different fake news and outlets and stuff and what you guys are saying. And then regarding Ciscomani and Lake, can you print what she said about the water and what he said?
Yeah, we printed the column after she was there, and it addressed lots of different issues. And then that, no, the camera going, that lunch is off the record. But hey, the man should own those words at least. So, but it is difficult, I'm guessing, to be in Congress because there's so much of, I'll vote for this if you vote for that. And if he's not on board, and what I really went after him about last year was when he voted 3 times to elect Jim Jordan House Speaker.
Yeah.
And we had a long talk about that at lunch too. And I started out with, how could you? This man is not bipartisan. He thinks it's awful to even look at the Democrats, much less talk with them about the issues and whatever. And if you remember, I wrote a column on it, and we printed a picture of a spine, and it said, if you can't find Juan Ciscomani, he's out looking for a spine. And knowing full well that he has to answer to a lot of people, and who are threatening his job, quite honestly, if he doesn't go that route. I don't care. You don't vote for someone like that for House Speaker.
Can you repeat the question, though? There's some other.
About the newspaper.
Yeah. has done tons of work. It's just the structural changes are such that, you know, and every year, every couple of years, we're in periods of reinvention. And yes, reader surveys, different kinds of stories. I know right now we are putting someone back on high school sports where we didn't have someone before. That's an example of a place that's just, you know, very important to many readers. But the structural changes are such that it's kind of swimming against the stream.
George, will you do one more, or what do you want to do?
I can do two more. I think we got one here, and then I want to go Tom. Tom's an old newspaper guy, and so I promised him a word.
I just wanted to mention, well, I've noticed that there's been several reporters that used to work for the Star, and now they've started their own Substack or whatever, and their reporting is pretty good, but I mean, they have to sell subscriptions to keep going, and it seems like this is a common problem, and one of the reasons why there aren't enough reporters.
Yeah, well, the example I think you're probably referring to is the Tucson Agenda. Kurt Prendergast and Caitlin Schmidt, who were at the Star. Kurt got laid off. He was opinions page editor, and it was a bitter loss. I don't understand it. And then Caitlin left on her own accord, and they joined this Substack-based newsletter project, which is started by Hank Stevenson up in Phoenix. Anyway, yeah, I mean, to me, it's tough because you want people to be sure to be able to make a living at this job, but these kinds of experiments are, you know, really helping. Like they drive people like me into competitive situations where we're trying to like feed off each other or learn from each other. I quoted not the Tucson Agenda, but the Arizona Agenda the other day in their reporting on Justine Wadsack's take as a reimbursements as a state senator, which was incredible. It was $80,000 or something like that for the total. So anyway, yeah, that's why that's there. But it's bad to me that we don't have those people. But on the other hand, it's good that they're still doing something like that.
I hope those can be sustained. It's very difficult because they're not relying on advertising, and you just got to get a lot of people who are willing to pay for news that you can't get anywhere else, and they have to keep pushing that out. They are not going to be nearly as comprehensive, meaning covering all the community, as the Star or us down here, but they do get a hold of some really good, deep stories, and I'm really glad for them. TucsonSentinel.com is another one, Dylan Smith, and then we have Arizona Luminaria and a couple of others. So,
yeah. Tom, you want to answer your question?
Yeah, I worked for over 30 years in a newspaper in Michigan, the opinion page, and got involuntarily laid off about 15 years ago. So I well understand the plight that the newspapers are in, not getting any better. I just recently found out the newspaper vacated a building that it and his antecedents had occupied for more than 175 years. I don't know where they're physically present. Anyway, I just wanted to ask, there are proposals out about giving newspapers, especially in rural areas, I guess, tax subsidies in order to keep them going.
Right.
And I have a kind of reflexively negative opinion of that, but I want to hear you.
I have a negative opinion, and I helped write the original legislation. It came out of WIC, and then we got members of Congress here, and then Washington State on board, and this was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and then at that time it was called the Local Journalism Sustainability Act, and it was kind of the brainchild of our CEO, and a couple of us were brought in to help with that. And the idea was that you give tax credits for hiring certain people, et cetera, and in the end, it'll sunset after 5 years. Well, we think politicians, once they get money, it's like crack and they'll never give it up. But that happens with newspapers too. Sunset, it was, and I even challenged our CEO on that. I said, there's no way we're going to, one, figure it out in 5 years. We just need breathing room. And two, that we're going to be willing to give up those subsidies. It has taken on, it doesn't look anything like we wrote it originally, but it is bad, and it almost passed, I think last year, but didn't. and it is back again this year, and they have the word business in it. And so they can push it, get it by a lot of people. But the way a lot of members of Congress, the Republicans, look at media, you think they're going to do anything for us, But I would agree with you. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with it at all. I'm also not comfortable with lots of papers going away.
Yeah. There is an alternative that has cropped up. I was just trying to look up the details, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't find them quickly enough. Just now, I think it was a week ago, in California, there was a settlement of I think it was a lawsuit or some sort of complaint against some of the big tech companies by somebody in California. And there's, as a result, $350 million is going to be going to news outlets. Now, that's not a sustainable business model or anything, but at least that's kind of getting the money from where it went, and it's not just like we're taking their money. There have been a lot of anti-competitive practices on the part of the social media companies, trying to suppress news stories, trying to push us to the side. Recently, Google, I understand, was experimenting with eliminating the news tag that you can click on at the top of Google searches. Facebook has suppressed any links to news stories. Twitter, of course, Elon Musk has tried to go down the Donald Trump path and suppress, denigrate, or otherwise stigmatize and stamp out independent news media. And so there are reasons, and that's not a sustainable business model or whatever, but I think that this may prove productive for a little period here.
And I just want to say that we do have this National Journalism Sustainability Act, but 2 states, and I think New York is one of them, 2 states have passed something similar on a statewide level to help out journalism outlets in their states, because they recognize what is lost when a decent newspaper goes under.
Is it usually in the form of tax credits for people hired?
That was our original plan, and that they pay for part of the salary of people we brought on, and different things like that. Yeah, as I said, you got to go look up the new one, because ours has really been, everyone has to, I call it peeing on the tree. You put a bill forward, and then everyone has to feel like they've, made their, you've been in the business. That's what we say. And so now it looks really nothing like it, but it is moving forward.
One last question for me. I could ask the last one. Is how much does your corporation have influence upon what you're writing, either in your editorial or your column?
None.
0.
So they keep you.
You get to do it.
Hey, but as that's coming forward, let's give them a big hand for all the work they do.